Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to come to Cami first, and as you've only got a couple of minutes. So we were talking about a sparkling way you've seen an educator create a positive classroom culture. And Cami, you were talking about the car map.
Oh, yes. Well, this particular school that I was talking about is really interesting. It's we have a couple schools in our district that have German Mennonite. We call them Mexican Mennonites because their families emigrate from Mexico to Canada. They're predominantly farm laborers. Anyways, and we have a couple schools where the whole almost 90% of the kids are from this background, and most of them come into grade 1 or kindergarten with no English. They speak German from Mexico. Anyways, so very interesting dynamic, but they do lovely, and the school's lovely. And so we've got this one teacher in particular, she uses the Calm app, if you're familiar. You know, it's just one of those social emotional. She puts that on, and she turns the light down. She turns the lights low, and she closes the blinds, and then she has these little sparkly lights, and she invites the kids to kind of stretch out, and they've got some little pillows and stuff, and they just go through whatever that meditation is. And I'm thinking, like, this is so not what these kids are doing at home, right? This is not what's happening culturally for them, and they just love it. And so she does that with them every so often, and I've been in her class a couple times when they've done it. It's just lovely, and the kids just love her for those kinds of things. They're having those experiences that they don't have at home, but they just think they're so special. So that's what I talked about.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Those are the best classes to go into, right? Yeah, cool. Thank you. And Roxy, you were talking about board games on a Friday afternoon, and I was amazed to hear you after class on a Friday afternoon. Tell us about that.
No, it was another teacher that I'm helping, and we were going to meet, and she had asked if we could reschedule because she was, first of all, very excited that the thing we had talked about doing together, she had actually figured out how to do on her own the day before, so she was super excited. But she also wanted to spend some time with her students, and she said she'd started a tradition of after school on Fridays, anyone that wants to can come join, and they could just kind of talk and socialize. And then she has these digital board games that they can play together and just kind of have some free time together. And she was just talking about like how much she enjoyed it, and she was so excited because so many kids had, decided to come and volunteer and be there. She's a completely online teacher. So I think she was just excited to have that time with her students. So I thought that was really sweet.
That's cool, yeah. So what time do you all finish on a Friday or any day of the week?
Depends on the school. I think anywhere from like 2 to 3. That's actually a really good question. Sure, we're all over the place. I mean, there's different. I think we have like 3 different release times.
Okay. Is that similar in Canada then? People finish at all different times?
There we go. Sorry, there. Is that my mute? Yeah, we are actually in my district. We have all these complicated busing schedules, and so anywhere from about maybe 2:45 to 3:25. But it depends on the community and the communities that are connected to that community, and it all gets very complex. So yeah, mostly I'd say no one's done before 2:30 in general for us.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to come to Kim now because you were talking about the big meeting with cameras on, cameras off. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So we're all back to face-to-face learning now as of last Wednesday. But, there were an awful lot of high school students when we were hybrid that just wouldn't have their cameras on. And there were a lot of teachers that were really complaining about that. As someone who's introverted and sometimes really, really shy, like I totally get that, not wanting to have the camera on all the time. But, there were a lot of teachers that were just like, I don't understand it, and these kids aren't engaged, and so forth and so on. So one of the teachers who has a fairly big club, she has like 70 kids in her club, and she said, okay, we're going to have this discussion and we're just going to talk about, what's your opinion on this whole thing? Cameras on or cameras off, and why? And so the kids were really, insightful, and, the kids are very respectful, and they all said, we understand that, sometimes we need to have our cameras on, like at the beginning of class, but to have it on the whole time, like especially if you're doing an activity where you're just expected to read something, it's awkward. And a lot of the teachers, because it was a hybrid situation, half of the kids would be in the classroom, the other half would be at home. And so they would project on the screen, and so everybody could see these kids, and now they're like bigger than life. And it was really uncomfortable. And they also said the same thing that all of us are saying, that they're juggling a lot at home. Some of them, they have younger siblings. And so I think it was really helpful for the kids to have that opportunity, because they were from, all different grades in high school, all different classes. And for the teachers to be able to hear that, it's not that we're disengaged, it's that sometimes we're uncomfortable. And so, I think it helps some teachers to see that, okay, so, maybe we could just ask at certain times for them to have their cameras on, and that would be reasonable.
That's good. So they listened then?
Yeah. And then we went back to full-time face-to-face. So,
Yeah. Okay, thank you. How about you, Melissa? Anything to add on this question? I know you didn't write in the slide on this one. It's just about a sparkling way you've seen an educator create a positive classroom culture.
I haven't been in a classroom or observed a classroom in a while, and we all over the past 3 or 4 weeks have been doing transitions. The only thing I can think of is the one teacher that I'm coaching. She does do a Monday share day, and she's trying different ways for the kids to share, just to kind of change it up a bit. So I think she did a flip grid one time, and then I was talking to her about the sketch and tell, and maybe that she could, she's looking at ways for the kids to communicate with each other and to offer positive feedback and stuff. So I thought that might be one way she could do it. So she's going to look at starting that also with a share day, because the kids like to share. So.
Yeah, thank you. How about you, Gerardo? Do you want to contribute on this question? I can see you've got your camera off. Oh, I've been struggling today because my students have had problems with their microphones today. So I've been talking and they've been talking, but I haven't been able to hear them. So yeah. How about you, Becky? Anything to add to that one?
Sorry, not at this second. I
That's
was
fine.
trying
That's
to
totally
finish up with something else, but I am fully with you all now.
It's totally fine. Let's move on to the next question then. So we'll move on to question 1.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Frances. I'm making groceries for cows, and I am not at home, so I just listening today.
It's totally fine. It's good to have you here. Just checking in to make sure you're okay. Good to see you.
So am I very happy to see you too.
Okay, so question 1 was about fostering innovation. And I'm going to come to Kelly. Oh, Kelly had a question, really, I think. You said that you thought it was a mindset problem, and then you had a question. Do you want to talk about that for us?
Yeah, I just, we read the mindset book a couple years ago at the high school, and it seems to me like it's a combination of both skill and mindset. When you're really trying to foster innovation in the teacher's practice. So for me, once I get the mindset changed, then it's easier to come in with, here's some things that can build on that now. I like to probably lead with mindset beforehand. Otherwise, I feel like if I just share some skills for some innovation practices and they don't have that mindset, I feel like they're doing it out of compliance. Mm-hmm. And it's not really something that would be part of their practice. So I guess if I had to pick one or the other, I would say lead with mindset and then bring in, the practice and tools that will help, them build an innovative lesson or, just change of practice of some sort.
it's hard to build that mindset. That's a change in beliefs, and I struggle with that sometimes, but I know if I don't start with the why, that, it's not going to sustain, and they will do it. I mean, all the teachers are very nice that I work with, and they'll all do it. They'll all go and do it, but then it will be a one and done. Yeah. So I guess that's about it.
So they do it because you ask them to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have about 160 high school teachers, and I've been working with them for 9 years, and I'm blessed with great, colleagues. So they will do it just to be nice. And then they'll let me know they did it. And then it's like a one and done. And I'm like, no, like this is building our practice. We're growing, we're learning. And I thought, oh man, I have to get that thinking changed before I can really get the practice to change. So.
Yeah, it makes me feel better that you finished with a question, because I have the same question, like how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
And Cami, you kind of carried on from what Kelly was saying that it was a mindset and a skill problem. Cami, I think.
There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to get my next meet lined up.
Oh, sorry. I'll stop asking you questions then.
No, I'm gonna answer this one, and then I'm gonna be done. But I think that's so, like, just, who was that? Kelly was just hit that on the head. Like, the tech problem or the skills, that's kind of like that might be what we see, but really it's the mindset piece. And when I look at the teachers who are most reluctant to try new things, it's the mindset has to come first, right? That's the piece that's blocking, or that's really preventing any kind of innovation or even willingness to try new things, is that mindset of it's either, and the worst mindset is it's good enough, right? Or it's okay, I don't need fixing, my class doesn't need fixing, it's good enough. I was just talking with the principal this afternoon about how we could grow a few mindsets into things that really they're like, he's got these things that they really need to address, but they're like, oh, good enough. So when I try to come in and work with them, it's like, no, good. No, I'm fine. Thanks. I'm fine. So anyways, with that, I'm going to leave you all until next time.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. And I'm going to come to Roxy now, because you were talking about, as well as the mindset and the skills, Barry, you were talking about a lack of shared vision from the school or the district.
Yeah, we were having this conversation on Saturday at the UC Open Chat in our breakout room, and it turns out me and I think her name is Becky Young, Techie Becky or something like that, when we were having that discussion, and we both happened to be reading Caitlin Tucker's blended learning book right now, and we were having a discussion about like how difficult it is trying to align goals when you, as an organization, you don't have like a shared vision or a shared goal. So then it's like compounding, right? You've got the problem that like there's mindsets that need to change. There's also, I think, like, sometimes I don't know what comes first, because I think sometimes it's hard to change mindsets when people don't know what that could look like. Like you say something like vague, like blended learning or technology integration, and they're like, I don't know, like they can't envision what that would look like. So we were just talking about how it's even more difficult when everyone has different versions in their head of like where we're trying to get to, because really you ideally want to work backwards and build up those skills of where you're trying to go. And that plays into the whole why part. I mean, people are going to get frustrated if it's not like anchored to something that they like truly believe in. When things start going wrong, then I don't know that they're going to have that drive to stay with it if they don't have that idea of where it's going to go and why they should be buying into the whole thing. So we had a really good conversation about that. And I think we're both reading those books at the same time, kind of digging into them. So.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It's definitely something I can relate to big time in my organization. Sometimes you feel like you're kind of a little bit alone with these ideas, and thank you. And Melissa, I liked it. I think this was the question where you said everything that they said. Have you got anything you want to add or ask at this point?
No, not really. You guys kind of all touched on it. You were mentioning about the time, and then mentioning about it's all fine and good if you have the skills, but if your mindset is on, well, I've got these 15 other things pulling at me, you're not even going to access those skills that you have, or even if you see something that's new and you go, this is really cool, I'll keep that in mind for future use, you know, and then it just doesn't happen. So yeah, everything everybody was saying, I was like, yep.
Yeah. And how about from a librarian's perspective, anything new that we should be thinking about that you've spotted? No?
No, I don't know what happened this week. I kind of got stuck on a lot. I answered that one question and I read everybody else's answers, and
yeah. To be honest, it's the second time I've done this book study, but this time when I came to these questions, I was like, yeah, I don't really have the answers to these. Yeah, I don't remember the same feeling last time. It's interesting. Thank you. So let's move on to question 2 now then. And question 2 was about, developing curiosity and questions. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come to, so Kelly, Kelly, you were talking about modeling it for teachers and needing it to model. And Melissa and I were both really interested in how you did this.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you can show like them the non-examples of something and have them actually do it, that helps to embed it a little bit. I use one of my most effective things that I've done with teachers is I give them a biology test right when they come into PD. So I just took a passage from a biology textbook in about, I'd say 8 to 10 multiple choice questions. And I tell them, you know, pretend it's class and I'm going to grade this. And I give them a few minutes to go answer it, and they all answer it. We go over the answers, they score it, you know, how many people got 100, and they all put their hand up. And then I ask them just to flip the quiz over and write a 4-sentence summary, because they just got 100% on a biology quiz. Can you summarize it in 4 sentences? And I do this with students too, and they just look at me. And I'm like, well, you know, this is why, you know, when you give a quiz or something in class and then you ask them to go apply it and they can't do it, like, are you seeing that, you know, this isn't really doing anything, this multiple choice quiz. It's not building, you know, any content or learning. And sometimes when I, you know, use examples like that, like non-examples, and then that will change the mindset a little bit. You know, have you had a student pass all their multiple choice, but then they can't even think about the topic? That helps a little bit. So I tried to do that. Again, I think it goes back to the last question, you know, trying to change your mindset. You know, are these worksheets really, you know, helping the students? You know, or are they all getting 100, but they don't know anything about the topic? So that helps with, you know, in some trainings. And I like doing it with students too, because they grade it. They think they get 100. They're so excited. And and then I'll say, can you give me a 1-sentence summary? And they're all, and even honors kids, our highest kids, they're looking at me, they're like, you know, I can't. And it brings to light, you know, how valuable, you know, is that practice of worksheets.
That's interesting. I have to try giving a biology test to my teachers and see how they like that. That's really cool.
Well, they feel, even the teachers feel so smart. They're like, I got them all. And they're all excited. And I'm like, okay, flip it over. You're not allowed to flip it back. And the text it's not even a half a page. And it's like, I think the light turns on for them. Like, is this what my students are doing? You know?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And then Roxy, you had the idea of in PD getting teachers together to ask open-ended questions and how you might do that.
Yeah, I don't know how. I love the idea. Yeah. I mean, I was saying it's not currently, they tend to be really short, like 30-minute sessions. So not sure if that's like the right environment. I actually just thinking, I remember being at I think it was one of those like ed tech team, you know, when they come into town, they do like their sessions before pre-COVID, obviously. And Holly Clark was there, and she was talking about, one of her sessions was about the worksheet or research she was doing with the, I think it's called the Right Question. I'm going to butcher the name of this, but it's like the Question Institute or the Right Question, but she had this whole activity where like you get into groups and then you like, you know, put questions and then you categorize them by open or closed or something like that. It reminded me of that. And was a really awesome activity. And I was like, right now I was thinking, I'm like, oh man, I need to search that up. I have that somewhere, I think. But it was kind of a similar thing, like just getting, it was like a strategy for getting your students to ask more open-ended questions. But I love the idea of doing that with teachers. I just feel like it would, you would need more time. And I also feel like you'd kind of have to warn them. It's not really the type of like PD session we typically do. It's a little more like, here's how you use this, or here's how you do this. So I do think it would be really interesting though, if we had some like teachers that were willing to try something new.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem it would be something that you would maybe, if you mentioned your shorter sessions, like you have, you know, a series of sessions, like where they're getting the information and they're getting this, and then you could have that PD where, all right, you've just been coming here for, you know, 3 sessions or 4 sessions. Now let's throw some questions out there. Where do we want this to go?
I love that.
It's like you want them to get the basic information and be able to kind of ruminate on that for a little while before throwing the questions out there. And, you know, like you said, time is a factor. So especially with adults, and they like to kind of talk things out. They're a little bit more talkative than kids will tend to be sometimes. So yeah,
that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And I'm thinking back to something you said before, and I'm trying to, like, it's going through my mind too fast, so I can't in. Because Melissa, you're talking about changing your PD for next year with your boss, you said. Do you want to tell us a little bit some of the ideas you've been having?
Yeah, well, you know, for the longest time, our PD was focused around this is how you insert an image into Google Slides. This is how you can create, you know, whatever it is. This is how you can do a certain activity. It was all how. And okay, practice a little bit. Okay, have a good day for an hour or an hour and a half. And we didn't spend a lot of time. And whenever we tried to deliver pedagogy, it was like, we had to kind of sneak it in there, you know, in between. We had to kind of sneak it in and say, okay, well, like, look at this way. Like you mentioned the modeling, let's look at it this way. Okay, now why is this not a good idea? Why is this a good idea? And that's kind of how we did it. But now we're thinking, especially with all this online learning that we've been doing, and like all of these, you know, Flipgrid certifications, Screencastify certifications, you know, whatever all the different products are, and you go and you get these little bits of instruction, and then you answer some questions, and then you create this product, but it's like little bitty nuggets, but it's still just delivered. So we're trying to find ways to get it so that it's more, well, learner-centered, right? So having them do it at their own pace is good, but we're trying to find a way to get it there and still give them the information they need so that they can be successful with whatever tools that we have. We're going to be meeting. We're going to be having some discussions, but so we're open to ideas.
Yeah. So what ideas has everybody got then on that one?
It's almost like, so for the kids, when you're trying to teach them something, they need to understand like the real world application. So like the biology test, for example, like if they don't understand like where they're going to use that information in real life, it's not, they're not going to be enthused. They're not going to learn it. And it's the same thing with those how-to things, like how do you insert, you know, an image into Google Slides? Well, you have to get them somehow to be saying, so, you know, what am I going to do with that? Like, here's a great idea that I have of how we can apply that. They have to figure out the real life applications, just like the kids do.
Yeah. A lot of our teachers didn't know how to do any of the basics, though, when we started working online. So we really had to show them how to do it, as they couldn't survive. So that was a big problem. One thing that we've done, Melissa, for PD this year is it's like a project. So it's a reflective project, and teachers work on it. So it's like they're coaching themselves, if you like. So they have the freedom to work on an area of their own practice and do reading, and they've got like some time each week. And that's worked really well for some teachers, but it hasn't worked very well for those teachers who are struggling in the first place. So, yeah, no. Don't know what other things the rest of you have tried.
We moved to a more virtual PD at the high school this year, and the teachers like that. And they like the repetition. So like if we're I'm going to share Moat this week, but I'm going to share it multiple days. And that way they can stop in, to the meet whenever it's convenient for them. And they like that because they don't have to leave their room. It's, it's saving time. They could stop in on Monday and listen to Moat, and then they could stop in on Tuesday or Wednesday. They could go try it. Because I was thinking the same thing, how do we want to set up PD for trainings next year? And the feedback was like, keep it like this. That, and then I stole from Global GEG their bite-size PD, and I turned it into a contest, and they want more of those. So it might be just like in one thing, like here's a Jamboard, here's a template. If you do this, your name goes in a drawing, and it's amazing how much they. You just put contests and prize, and they're all excited. So that's what we did this year. And I'm like, Melissa, I'm not sure where we're going next year, but I think we will stay virtual for some of it during the school day, because I definitely get more participation that way. They said they hated when they would have to run down to a training session and run back to their class, and I'm missing this and I'm missing that. But I'm open to ideas too.
Yeah, I think we'll probably keep all our training online as well. It's just easier, right? It's more convenient. I don't know. How about you, Roxy? What are you thinking on that one?
Yeah, I'm curious. Kelly, what do you give for like the winners? Like, what do they win?
Chocolate. They like the chocolate. In fact, I forgot our planetarian teacher, astronomy teacher. I forgot to give him his prize from the one back, and I get an email. He's like, I never got my chocolate. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I was thinking of switching to on the Google store. You can get those little pens, and they're only there's some that are just $1 or $2, and switching to that, because I'll have like 6 winners. I had like 25 participate last time, and the candy's a little bit more, but the chocolate's always a win.
Brilliant. Okay. Anything else before we move on to the next question? Question 3? No. So question 3 is, this one is about perseverance, right? So Kelly, you were talking about embracing the hot messes.
I'm looking here. I forgot what I wrote. Yeah, I think that's it. Letting them know, especially with the increase in technology that a lot of them had this past year, like it's going to be a hot mess. If it's not, then something's wrong. Like the first couple times you try something, and also just trying to get them to understand, like the first time you use a new tool, it's really about the mechanics of it for you and the mechanics for the students too. So, try to use it with something silly and not with your content, and just try it like 3 or 4 times before you give up on it. Because I think if they give it multiple reps. And that's kind of what I'm doing with that bite size with Jamboard. I've just like every contest has been something with Jamboard. So it's working. I got a thing from one of our world language teachers today, and she's like, hey, I use this template. And I'm like, okay, then this is worth the time. Someone's grabbing onto that. But yeah, I think that's it. Just letting them know it's okay to mess up.
Do they believe you though when you tell them that?
I think they do, because I mess up a lot. And I think that helps. And I'll be like, whoops, where'd that go? And I'll even call attention to that. Like, this is our new norm. Like the tech might go, or internet might go. I'm going to hit the wrong tab, or I'm going to accidentally close out the meeting, or and we talk about, like, especially at the beginning of the year, like, make sure you prepare your kids for that. So if you accidentally close me, tell them that, it's class isn't over. Like, I'm coming back. So, but just, I think when they see me fail, they know it's kind of a safe zone that they can fail too.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And do you think that, because you're talking about using tech and tools in the classroom, do you find that just a general activity, not even necessarily technology, that sometimes that doesn't work the first time or the second time, it's only better the 3rd or 4th time? So it's just kind of a general thing, right?
Yeah, and you can relate that. Like, if you're going to come observe me, like, I want to be observed the last period of the day, because I just get better as the day goes on. That first period, it's like, oh, I handed out the wrong, hand it back. We're going to start over. So.
Yeah, thank you. Roxy, you were talking about plans for next year and having voluntary group of teacher technology leaders working on this and sharing, I think.
Yeah, so we're trying to expand, and our teacher technology leaders, which is just, we have like a teacher in each school that's kind of like their on-site go-to person. So we've been talking with them to see if they would be interested in adding sort of another like level or tier, basically just a pathway to take on more leadership. So there's a couple of different things that we're thinking about and that we talked to some of them about. But one of the things was them in some way reflecting on their experiences trying something new for the first time. And so, it could be that they blog about it. It could be like they do a Flipgrid video about it. So they all have kind of different ideas about what they might be comfortable with. But, basically just trying to encourage them because, we've talked about it. Part of what holds up some of our non-techie teachers is that fear of failing. And so we're like, hey, if you guys who are seen as like the techie people can be out there, alongside us, kind of sharing those things that sometimes go wrong, then I feel like that will create a safe space for some of our other teachers to be like, oh, well, like, it happens to everyone. So like, it's not just me. So we're hoping to do a little bit more of that sort of public reflection next year. Yeah. But it like makes you very vulnerable. So I'm actually really, I'm hoping that the people that are kind of like, yeah, I could see doing that. I hope they still feel in that way next year.
It's a lot easier to ask for feedback when you know everything's gone well, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking today I did a class with my class, and at the end of it, I thought, and I really should have gone into that with them and like really asked why and what the problems were. And we just kind of avoided it. And afterwards I thought, oh no, that was really bad. So yeah, maybe next time I see them, we'll talk about it. But yeah. Melissa, anything to add on this one? No. Do you think it's like some of my teachers don't even know what mindset means, I don't think. And like starting those conversations, I think I need to start them a lot more. But time hasn't been on my side this year, I don't think. So
and I think it's obviously it's more difficult to have a conversation about mindset than about skills. I think neither one's easy, but I think there's a lot more, there's just a lot more feelings and emotions tied to a conversation about mindset. So I'm not sure how you start that. And I think you have to have a really good relationship with that person, so that they don't feel like they don't get defensive or feel like they're being judged in some way when you start that. Yeah. So that'd be a topic to explore, is like, what kind of questions create that like safe space.
One of our departments last year did a whole project on mindset and changing mindsets, but we weren't involved in that. But I think if you do it as a whole like group, as a whole team, it may be probably easier. Like you were talking about having common goals, maybe. Yeah, but I've found that the people that I've coached this year and have got to know really well, then kind of as part of the conversation of the skills side of it, we've kind of been able to broach the other things. But those people, just hard. Right. I shall move on to the next question, then question 4. So question 4. This is about choice. And Kelly, you said that you were guilty of giving the illusion of choice.
Yeah, we call it forced choice in my house, and I'm guilty of it with my own kids. We're all gonna, they think they have choice, but they don't. It's all forced. But I was in the classroom too. I think I did the same thing. It really, there was no agency in it. They were picking activities that were really already cookie cuttered out for them. So the one thing that started though to change my mindset was project-based learning. So when we started looking more into that, I was like, oh, we can do this differently. We can cover all the standards, and, the kids can be creative, and we can still, make sure we have the correct academic outcomes, but at the same time, give that power to the students. So that is what really started my mindset changing. And then we have something, I live near, not too far from Pittsburgh, PA, and there's something there called Invention Land, and it's really just an entrepreneurship class. And we started that at the high school, where the kids actually come in and they create. So it was a combination of those two things that changed my practice and my thinking.
Interesting. So what kind of things did they create then?
Oh my gosh, gadget things, something for like cooking. And they actually, they go in competition, then they do a prototype, they go through all the steps of an entrepreneur. And then I know the one that won, I thought it was a muffin pan or something they created, but it's pretty cool. But it was neat to see it, the engagement and the motivation that they had, with that power of just, of creating their own steps to getting there. But there were still some, there were still guidelines that they had to reach, so it wasn't a free for all, like deadlines and that, and there were check-ins, but it was such a different way of teaching, and it really opened my eyes.
Yeah. And do you find that kind of way of teaching is popular with your teachers or in your schools, or is it difficult to encourage people?
It's a mix. It really is. It's we have some that are still very traditional, and we're constantly trying to change that mindset, because it's just, the learners are so different than they were, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And, we're really trying to engage the students more and get them motivated and just change some practice. But I would say, there's a lot that have moved on, and there's more project-based learning, definitely. But I think we can work out that area a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. And Roxy, you were talking about it working really well, giving students choice in your classroom, but how it was more difficult to encourage teachers.
Yeah. And it took me a while to come around to it too. I think I had so many control issues. It made me laugh. I was listening to the podcast, the Caffeinated Coaches podcast, when Shannon was talking about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember, I think back on those days and I'm just like, oh my gosh, those poor kids. I was so controlling, because I thought that's how it was supposed to be. And just worried about management all the time. And so when I started just dipping a toe into it, it was just this or that thing. And then over here it was this or that thing. And then as I got more comfortable, just when they were able to choose how they wanted to demonstrate learning, I was just so blown away, constantly blown away by the things they came up with. And I just thought, oh my gosh, of course, all I could think about was oh, I wonder what I missed out on those other years. I didn't try it, right? Because you can only think about the negatives and the things you missed. But at least eventually I got there. But yeah, it's tricky. I think it's like Kelly, I'm sure there's a mix. I think maybe hopefully next year, when we're able to get into more classrooms and we can start seeing, and kind of highlighting and getting examples from teachers that are doing it. And I mentioned, I think what's helpful is that we switched over to, we made a huge shift to Choice PD for our teachers, because we're all online. So we have all of these different sessions. Some are live, some are self-paced, and they can kind of pick and choose a couple every time we have our big district PDs, and they love it. All they say is hey, once we get back in person, let's not get rid of this. Let's not go back to in person. They love it. And so I'm hoping that we can build on that. Hey, how you really love teaching. I think though, it's hard for them to see how that translates into their own classrooms, right? In the context with the age and the content, what does that look like for me on a daily basis or on a weekly basis in a unit? So I think the more we can gather very specific examples of what it could look like, then I think that maybe they could be oh, okay. and maybe just, the small starts, not like, oh my gosh, like design your own whatever, but like little times when you can have them, make some choices, I think they'll start to see it. And I think it's learning experience for the students too, because I made the mistake of going sometimes too early in the year and being like, pick whatever, like choose what you're going to do. And they're like, what? Like something. So I think there's a balance too of helping students learn, like what works best for them. How do you choose a tool, that best fits the thing you want to make? So I think we'll get there.
Yeah, some of my students today, they were saying, well, we don't mind, you choose. Yeah. Oh, and Becky, you were saying that PBL works best when it's school-wide, which comes back to what Roxy was saying about having common goals, really, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, my husband's in a work call right behind me. So
sorry.
Oh, you're totally fine. He's not talking right now. So yeah, I actually came from a PBL school, and our focus was PBL and STEAM, where we once a month had to go and meet with the PBL coordinator, and everything was designed around what our authentic question was that the students would help design. And so coming from that to now a district where we don't use PBL, they've tried in some classrooms to implement, but then they're not doing what their teammates are doing. And then when their teammates are like, well, I'll just do the same PBL you're doing, it's like, well, then that's not authentic. And now you've just made it a project, which it is called project-based learning, but it's not meant to be create a diorama, So it is challenging when it's like one teacher, in a grade or anything like that. And then another thing Roxy was talking about, since I'm already talking, I'm just going to keep going before he jumps back in. Roxy, you were talking about like teaching the tools at the beginning. And I think that's a really solid point. Like we want our students to have choice, but it's really hard if they don't know a variety of ways to use those tools. And if we don't teach that from the get-go, like, hey, I'm going to teach you Flipgrid. I'm going to teach you how to use it in a multiple different ways. So that way, come October, when I say choose something, you may choose Flipgrid. Like you'll understand. So I really like that point. And I think I often skip that as well when working with teachers, where I'm like, oh, give them choice between this, this, and this. And it's like, no, they have to know how to use it. So all great points. Ditto to all of the above that you said.
Yeah. It's true. I think when we're working with students, we like allow for them not to know anything, but when it's teachers, we expect them to know things and they don't necessarily do it, right? And that starts to get frustrating. And it's a shame that Melissa's gone because she was asking about blogs. So do you use blogs with your students? Or do your teachers use blogs with their students, I should say?
I just don't, but I was trying to encourage one the other day. Because they were doing informational writing, and I'm like, let's, do it in the form of a blog. But going back, I don't believe they didn't have the skills. And I think, for using the blog tool, and I was way ahead of myself for that. But I think that would be a good idea. And then something that Roxy said just had me thinking, with the COVID happening, I think we have more choice than we ever had. Because we didn't have the printers, we didn't have the worksheets, and suddenly it's like, okay, we're going to do a multimedia text set or a hyperdoc, and they were having kids do Flipgrid. They were using all the different tools, and that definitely elevated some more choice and a different way of learning, for the kids. So I even had one teacher say, I'm not making the multimedia text sets. The students are going to make them. I want you to go, and I want, different types of media. You're going to create this. And I thought, wow, like we would not be there right now if we weren't all virtual. So that definitely has elevated a little bit more choice for us.
Yeah, I get that. I have more success teaching my learners to do something than I do my teachers. So if I ask my students to do that, they could do it. My teachers really struggle. Some of them still struggle to copy links and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, a part of right now, I think, is trying not to let everyone slip back into doing only whole group, like face-to-face instruction. That's kind of a big one right now, is that we can already feel them starting to be, because we're getting rid of smart boards and replacing them with just like the TVs. So the picture's better, but they can't touch it, and they're already starting to like freak out. And so they're like, well, what can make it? What can we use to replace it? And I'm like, well, what if we think about some different ways to do it? And I don't think they're in the headspace right now. A lot of them, but that's kind of, it's been a discussion lately, is like, is this an opportunity to think about how, not to get rid of it? Like, it's a totally useful, valid, way to deliver instruction. Can we balance it out with some like other ideas and other ways to do that? But again, I think it's partly mindset and partly like, that's what they know. That's how they were taught. That most of them learned that's what I learned when I went to, college and got my certificate. I didn't know about other blended learning things until I started exploring them. So I think for some of them, it's like, how can we find some like resources, like videos or whatever, so that they can see what are some other ways that they could do that, and then start mixing that in, and not just shift all the way back. So
yeah, and I think most of my teachers didn't start with smart boards; they started with chalk, and like, so there's some of them still haven't got to use the smart board yet. So interesting, yeah, but. Yeah. And when you were all talking about planning for next year, so when do you actually finish teaching for this year?
We're done the end of May. It's like, I think it's right around Memorial Day. Maybe it's like right before that, something like that.
Okay. So that's like, we don't finish till the end of July. So that's why I'm like thinking, wow, when you're talking about finishing the year, like, what? Really
yeah, we're almost there.
Yeah, we're June 11th. Too.
Okay. So you're the same as Becky then.
Yeah.
And how about you, Kim?
Middle of June.
Okay. Oh, has anybody got any more questions or anything else they would like to discuss or talk about now? I mean, we're quite early, but that's because there's only a very small group.
So I just wanted to say one thing about choice, and this has to do with libraries. And, I'm not normally the librarian that talks about the books, but right now I want to be the person talking about the books, because I think the thing that I struggle with is when teachers are insistent upon using the same old texts over and over again. And I feel like our students deserve better than that. It's probably awful that I say this, but I tend to cringe at the idea of classic books. And I think it's because I think there are ways to get our students' attention and get them to understand what high quality, writing is, without having to go back necessarily to those things. So trying to figure out ways to get teachers to give their students choice and saying, okay, so if you really want to read this text, great. But if you don't, here are 2 or 3 others that all have the same theme. So that's the one thing when talking about choice that I've been thinking a lot about. I'd really like to see our high school summer reading program change from what it is into something else, but I'm not there yet. I don't have a fully fledged plan. So
that's really interesting.
Every couple of months, I feel there's like a Twitter debate that like a raging debate that happens about like the text and like people on both sides of like the Shakespeare versus the. I mean, it's super interesting, but I mean, I'm with you, Kim. I think I saw someone put it really well. Something about you need to have like mirrors and windows, or mirrors, windows, and doors. I can't remember what the analogy was, but basically about like a balance of text where students can see themselves, text where students can see other cultures. Like there needs to be like that balance again in it. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't an ELA teacher, so I don't know, but I feel like they get very like attached to like that book they use every year. And I think some of it, I'm sure some of it comes from a good place of having really good memories of discussions they have with students or projects or whatever. But I think they get so tied to it sometimes. It's hard for them to like let go and try something new. So yeah, I know it used to happen in my school for sure.
So do teachers have the freedom to choose the text then, or how does it work?
I think ours had like there was a little bit of district, I think, control over it. Like they could choose between, like there was some, and because they wanted to make sure some grade levels didn't step on each other's feet, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why there was a little bit. But I think you could also, like if you wanted to get class sets from the district, they gave you some to choose from. There's something outside of that, then I think there was some sort of process you would go through to make sure it was like okay. But
we moved our high school to the reading workshop model. So we actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Lucy Calkins' reading workshop, but we actually, that's what we do all in our high school, all the way up through our honors. And we were able to select books in that for different book clubs, but it is all choice. You know, there's a little bit of forced choice with the book clubs, you know, because if it's a contemporary fiction book club, you know, they may have a choice of 6 books to pick from. But that is, I mean, we've created readers that we never had before. So, you know, prior to no choice, I mean, it was all fake reading. And that's a really good video. I don't know if you're familiar with Penny Kittle. She has a video on YouTube, and it's her interviewing her high school kids about the classics. And they all share how they cheated. And they said, some of the kids are like, I haven't read a book actually since 6th grade, but I have A's in all my English classes. So it's Penny Kittle, and it might be called Fake Reading, but it's a powerful video. I showed that to the high school ELA teachers, and it was just like silence at the end. I'm like, well, do you think we have any of them? You know? Because we were moving into the reading workshop model, which is not designed for the high schools. So we just took that model and made it our own. But it's been powerful. It's an adjustment. We still do some of the classics. Like they may do 2 classics, but it's funny because even with the classics now, they're doing them more in a reading workshop model. So they like that. But choices, it's a game changer. I mean, I honestly think it will make readers.
Totally. And even for the teacher, can you imagine reading the same book every year?
Mm-mm.
It's like, I mean, having to read certain books certainly put my own children off school when they were at school. They absolutely hated the books that were chosen for them. And if they'd have been they loved reading at home, but in the school, what they were given, hated it. I can't believe a teacher would want to do the same book every year. It's only just hitting me what you said, Kim. Yeah, so I totally agree with you there. Any other questions or points before we go then? No. So we're finishing early tonight. It's been really good to see you and hear you and listen to all your ideas again. I've been writing them down as usual. So I will look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time then. Thank you very much for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome.
Bye.